Hey, parents, if you were thinking about a wardrobe for your sons that you wanted to wear that said to them, this is what a good man looks like, what would that wardrobe be? Well, we're here to help you out today. My name is Tim Wright. I'm here along with Dr. Michael Gurry, the Wonder of Parenting podcast. We are here with some brain-based insights into parenting for you, and we've got some special guests with us we're going to introduce to you in just a moment. Before we dive into our topic for today, we want to give a shout out to our great sponsors who are represented, by the way, on our podcast today. This is the Army and Navy Academy. It is a private all-boys military boarding school for grades 7 through 12, located on the Pacific Ocean in Carlsbad, California. We mention this every time. That's the selling point for them because it's always in the first sentence. As a Gurian Center for Excellence, they use brain-based research to help boys thrive. Their structured environment, exceptional teachers, and leadership programs align with how boys learn best. Through hands-on experiences, mentorship, and challenge for over 114 years, Army and Navy Academy has been shaping virtuous young men by instilling confidence, character, and purpose. You can discover more at armyandnavyacademy.org. That's armyandnavyacademy.org. Michael, we've got some very special guests with us today. And we're excited to have them because they, in part, make it possible for us to bring our show free of charge to all of our many listeners. And I know our parents are very, very grateful for them as well. So why don't you introduce them to us, and then we're going to dive into our topic for today.
Okay. Yes. So Barry Schreiar and Mark Ryan. Barry is the president of Army and Navy Academy, and Mark is the dean of academics. And I've worked with them closely, especially Barry. We've known each other for probably 15 years. And Mark, I've just recently met. They're just doing incredible things at Army and Navy. I'm going to be there. Actually, as we're taping, I'm going to be there next week. By the time this drops, I will have been there again. I love going there. It's an amazing place. The education is amazing. And we have asked you guys, Barry and Mark, we've asked you to be on our show because we want to look at I'm going to ask you questions about what boys need. And Army and Navy Academy is actually going to be represented in our What Boys Need as Males conference, which is a Zoom conference that's on in January. And so it's just a great opportunity for me to quiz them on what boys need since they work with boys. And also kind of set up that we'd love people to see them at the conference too. So Barry Schreiar and Mark Ryan.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you both with us today. And as our parents know, as you know, we've been talking quite a bit. We always have in this podcast because the needs of boys always rise to the top. And particularly, I think over these last 6 to 7 months, there's been a lot of energy about boys. Some of it from a negative perspective, people concerned about the manosphere. But there have been a lot of people, Michael, who are really jumping on the bandwagon right now, talking about boys, talking about the unique issues that boys face. And we've done quite a bit of talking about that. So what we want to do today is we want to sort of speak to one of those major needs that people are identifying in their boys, and that's to find purpose, good purpose in life. And I'm referring to it as a wardrobe, their mental wardrobe, physical wardrobe, emotional wardrobe. So let's start, Michael. And what is the first thing you want to pick the brains of these guys and ask them what our boys need to be good men, good males?
Yeah, well, I love your thing about the wardrobe. So I don't know where this one would fit. So you may have to help. But I'm going to start with what's on everyone's mind, which is mental health. Yeah. So I'll first ask, all right, you guys, when you think about the mental health of boys, what comes to your mind? What do they need in terms of their mental health?
Well, thank you both for having us. We really appreciate it. Look, as you introduced us, Tim, we're an academy. We're a boys' military boarding school. All of those elements fit together. I mean, we're constantly thinking about the whole boy. So these various aspects, what the physical needs, mental needs, moral needs, emotional needs, their spiritual needs, that's every day. And I don't think you can necessarily break them into pieces and get the effectiveness that you're looking for. I think that's a mistake in many cases in a lot of schools, is that, for instance, in a public institution, where you're not talking about, spiritual issues, which in many cases don't lead to the depth of virtue conversations that are necessary. Just leave the boys, and they know it. There's something missing. There's a piece of the whole that's not there. And if you break them up too much, they have to find various places where they can get it. Here on our campus, it's all really there. The mental aspect of what we do it's infused in everything. Dr. Ryan can talk a lot about what's happening in our classrooms if you want to use mental and part of the ways from an academic, a cognitive perspective. But it also clearly quickly slips into the social and emotional aspects of it. You can't educate somebody effectively without considering all of these things. There has to be a holistic approach to it. Mark, you talk a lot about challenge and rigor and relevance. I think those things are critical.
Yeah, I think certainly one of the most important things is we know that there's a saying, people don't care what you know till they know that you care. Right. A big part of effective schools and effective societies is people being able to get along, people feeling a connection to others. And certainly at an all-boys military school, that sense of brotherhood is just at the core of what we do. And when boys feel like they have this strong connection to other boys and to the adults, the caring adults that are on their campus, that is really laying the foundation for them to have conditions for positive mental health. And part of that then is that boys want challenge, they want rigor, they want to know that that old-fashioned question that we all asked in school, when am I ever going to use this? Right? Well, boys need to understand there's a reason why I'm learning what I'm learning. It serves a purpose. But it's also challenging enough. There's a fairly significant philosopher in education, Lev Vygotsky, who has this concept called the zone of proximal development, which is this idea that a young person needs to be at just the right point in order to learn something. It can't be too hard, it can't be too difficult, it cannot be too easy. I call it the Goldilocks principle, right? It's got to be just right. A boy needs challenge, but it can't be so challenging that he's not even going to attempt it. And so, I think having rigor, having relevance, having quality relationships with their peers, with caring adults, those 3 R's are a really important element of a boy's mental health.
There's so many things that were embedded in what you guys were saying. And Michael, I want to start with you a little bit, and then I know our friends can tease this out. Band of Brothers was one of the things I heard right away. And I remember there was that great program that Tom Hanks put together and so on. Michael, can you talk just a bit about what a band of brothers means to boys versus relationships to girls, and why this band of brothers is such an important concept in the development of good males?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the brotherhood, and at Army and Navy, that's something, because as both Barry and Mark were saying, that they stress, and it's something that works really, really well. The Green Institute just did a white paper, independent study of Army and Navy, and of course, it was some amazing things came out of that. And one of them was how much the whole community, parents, everyone, values the brotherhood. And so the brotherhood, it may come out of a military framework, but it's also ancient, right? It's what you're referring to, Tim, that guys need to be in relationship with other males, so peer males and then mentorial males, because the brotherhood is peer males, but it's also run by mentors. So it's what I call a safe emotional container. So it's safe partly because adults are helping to run it, right? And then also because the guys are so bonded to each other. and they bond via challenge. They bond via a lot of things that to your other point, Tim, that sometimes women will look at or girls will look at and go, what the heck is that? That just seems anathema to bonding to them, but it is bonding to the guys. And it's really, really necessary. So the warrior is the, I just lost the word. It's not the mascot. What's the warrior? ANA has the warrior. What's that called in education? When a school has it's
really the mascot. Yeah.
It is the mascot, the warrior.
Yeah, yes.
I feel like there's another word for it. Okay. So warrior is like the perfect archetype for brotherhood, and hence Band of Brothers, right? Those are warriors. Those are people at war who bond. Well, at Army and Navy, they're not at war, but they're bonding, and part of what they do is sharpen each other's swords. They're by challenging each other and by lifting each other up, and the older ones help the younger ones, and the older ones help model virtue for the younger ones, and then the younger ones mature. And a boy comes into something and he's 14, let's say, or he's 12, and we just can't really expect him to mature yet. But this Band of Brothers, this group of warriors, they mature the kids. So not the maturation isn't only falling on 20 or 30 staff, it's falling on this brotherhood to help mature the youngers. And I'll shut up now because of course we have to go to a break. But is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, I think I'm getting at, and right before the break, where do boys get this outside of a boys' school? Because it sounds like a really important part of helping boys develop into good males.
Well, they do. I mean, they certainly can form brotherhoods themselves,
right?
And we want them to, because if they don't, they may go form gangs. So we really do want them to form brotherhoods that are not gangs, let's say, that are not around selling drugs or whatever they would be around, or scarce resources. So the guys will form peer brotherhoods. They just may not be as virtue creating, let's say, as the brotherhood at ANA.
Yeah. All right. You're listening to the Wonder Parenting podcast, and we're here with some friends from Army and Navy Academy with Barry and Mark, and we're going to be back with you in just a moment. Okay, whichever one of you wants to take this, and we already know that Mark is sort of the scholar of the two of you, so we may start with him. He knows the big words. You've used the word virtue, and it seems to me that a word like virtue, other kind of character words, are really the kinds of character qualities we want to be embedding into our boys, and maybe we're not always providing those kinds of opportunities. Define for us in your setting what virtue means and how you are embedding that into the boys at your school.
Oh, I'm happy to go.
All right, Barry's going up first.
So look, virtue here is very, very simple. We use the Aristotelian way of thinking about it. It's human excellence, right? About value terms here that we believe best exemplify, and we need to model human excellence. And they're things like compassion and gratitude and commitment and honor and integrity and responsibility and accountability and duty. And we expect that they're modeled on our campus every single day, not just by our staff and our faculty, but our corps of cadets. The military aspect of what we do here really helps bring that out in a much, much greater aspect. Because in order to take on a leadership position, you have got to be able to adopt those qualities. It will not work. You will fail. I don't care if it's in the military or if it's in the private sector. You will not move people unless you understand how these characteristics will help you get them there. So we talk about it every day. We have a program every single week. We're in our chapel specifically talking about virtue. We bring in outside people to talk on a very regular basis, 3 out of 4 weeks. And they talk about virtue issues, about how that worked in their life, how boys can see it in them so that they can have a 3-dimensional example of what it looks like. You know, the talk that boys aren't being, that there's an emotional gap for boys is there because there's no real understanding of how this piece of the whole has to be discussed on a regular basis. We're a non-denominational institution, and we talk about this every single day throughout the entire day. When we talk about brotherhood here, what we're teaching is devotion. It's everything to our boys. And they see that. That virtue is incredible. So without it, and I'm unfortunately in institutions where they're literally prohibited from being able to have those discussions, you just leave the boy unsettled. He's unwhole and he knows it.
I would just also add that, yesterday as I walked around classrooms, I was struck by how much virtue was embedded in the academic day. I walked into a senior junior social studies class where they were having a very powerful discussion about the horrific assassination that had just occurred. Mm-hmm. And there was a wonderful, very heartfelt, thoughtful conversation about that, using the lens of virtue and the values that Army and Navy Academy tries to espouse. I walked into a science classroom where there was a conversation about respect for creation and the earth and caring for the beach, caring for living things, showing respect toward all living things. I was in an English class where they were reading the wonderful novel Night, and there was a great discussion going on about the immorality that exists in some people and in some institutions, and how A&A is a place where the boys are trying to learn very explicit things that are opposite some of those negative values and negative virtues. So those discussions, that's just in one day. Those are 3 classrooms I happen to be walking into, but that sort of discussion and activity is embedded throughout their academic day. And that's a huge piece of when we talk about virtues development. It isn't just modeling, it isn't just the chapel talks. All of those things are great, but it's also embedded in every academic area, when they are in the mess hall having a meal, when they are out on the football field, wherever they're at, these core virtues and values are being taught and modeled and discussed. And at times when those values or virtues are not being demonstrated in the way that we know they could, would, should be, then there's a great discussion about what do we need to do to improve the kinds of virtuous lives that we're trying to live.
Mm-hmm. Michael, I would imagine that the parents who listened to our show this summer when we did that whole series on boys and kind of used the manosphere and some of the other things that people are talking about, concerned about, they're hearing a refreshingly different take on masculinity than maybe we're getting from certain aspects of our culture. And I know you wrote a book on boys and helping boys find their purpose. Talk a little bit about what you're hearing and how that can sort of be translated to families who maybe don't have this rich environment. They don't have the school to go to, but this school is showing us that these virtuous discussions and virtue itself can be built into our boys.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think it's so great to be talking about virtue and value. I actually think that this is a big part of mental health, going back to what Barry said in the beginning about how they're holistic. And that's just such an important approach for our kids, for boys and girls, for everyone. And sometimes in other environments, the holistic approach, unless people have a faith community, right, that they're really embedded in, sometimes virtue and value stuff doesn't come up enough. Right. In public school, it comes up as character traits, which is really good. They went through a phase where for like 10 or 15 years, it wasn't coming up at all. And then people were, no, come on. So then character traits started about 20 years ago, which are really great. Everything to some extent, every boy needs to grow up. And this is part of, good masculinity, needs to grow up understanding that there's value and virtue in everything and that we have to find it. And when it's not there, then that's not what we pursue. And boys who pursue purpose become men who pursue purpose, are pursuing value. They have assigned value and they're pursuing it. and it's their goal to accomplish this purpose, and it'll be multiple things, but to accomplish purpose means they're seeking these values, and they're pursuing these values, and they'll define their lives by how they accomplish them, how they come up short, how they exceed them. And so, yeah, I think values and virtues are very connected to purpose development. And I think it is hard for kids to, especially guys, to develop with a sense of purpose if they haven't been working through character, virtue, and value.
Mm-hmm. You've talked before, and before we take a break, let's just chat about it again. You've talked about these important discussions we can have around the dinner table, which are discussions like they were having at the school there. We referenced the assassination that took place yesterday of Charlie Kirk. An important time to sit around as a family and talk about our values and what does this mean and what's going on, to maybe spend a day talking about the environment. You're a big advocate for sitting around the table and having these discussions, and this is where virtues can sort of be imparted to our boys in particular.
Yeah, where we come together in a little family unit, it'd be great to protect as many dinners as possible, family dinners as possible, and one or two of those, everyone does current events, and we talk about those. Let's say, certainly that's how we did it with our kids. It's how my parents did it with me, so that the kids are having debates at the dinner table, and of course that means no devices. So no one, parents or kids, no devices at the table. This is all about kind of bonding together through the social discussions. A&A, for instance, takes they don't have devices for most of their school day, which is really, really important. And it's certainly important, like to have these discussions. We can't be locked into devices. We can't be distracted. We have to be with each other. And we just, these sharpen each other's swords, truthfully, because people may have different points of view, and they create bonding. And that means the family is constantly discussing character, virtue, and value. And that's good. We want the family to be constantly doing that, just like we want the school to be.
Right. And again, just how impressed I am to be reminded that boys can have these kinds of discussions, because we don't often hear those kinds of discussions out in culture, but boys can and do have these kinds of really, really good discussions. So we're going to be back. We've got one more little break we're going to take, and then we'll wrap up our time together. You're listening to the Wonder Parenting Podcast, and my name is Tim Wright, along with Dr. Michael Green, back with our guests in just a moment. So guys, from the school there, Barry and Mark, we've talked a little bit about sort of the close of virtue and character. We've talked a bit about mental health. Mark, you referenced a little bit sort of activity-based stuff. And I know that, at least from my perspective, sports culture has kind of been the tail wagging the dog in a lot of male venues and spaces these days. How are you at your place helping boys move their bodies, be active, participate, have their competitions, while recognizing that not all boys are going to be top wide receivers in the NFL?
Well, I think that, first of all, you're right. Not every boy is going to end up being a top wide receiver, but there is tremendous value in belonging to an interscholastic sports team, belonging to an intramural sports team, where you get an opportunity to have those bonding moments, but also to be more physically fit. And we know that there's all kinds of benefits to physical fitness. And I'm going to pass it over to Barry, who I know feels particularly strong about this need for ongoing physical fitness and its benefit for boys.
Well, it's funny, when we talk to parents, we've reached a point, Tim, where parents really don't think a lot about physical activity. Why do we need to do that? And it's a little bit surprising. I mean, and by the way, we say that within the context of being a military institution. I mean, you'd really expect it here, right? But look, there's plenty of really great research. I'm sure that I know Michael and I have talked about, John Rady's book, Spark, and the discussion about how the brain itself requires it so deeply, right? I mean, we talk about it around here that says it's like a light switch. You can't start the learning activity until you've had enough, some amount of physical activity. You literally have to turn it on. And look, there's nobody better than Michael that talks about, how a boy brain can go to sleep within, in small areas, right? So, and we're looking at the best aspects of why physical activity is so incredibly important. Better production in the early periods of the day, because boys just couldn't wake up. They couldn't start the engine. This does it. You'd be shocked at our food output now in the morning. From a nutritional aspect, the boys couldn't learn. They wouldn't eat. Now they do. So, there's so many benefits, not to mention that, just like we said, this idea that it literally we now have some good science that produces brain cells. I didn't know that was possible when I was young. I was only told I could lose them, right?
Right.
So there's so much benefit for our boys. And I think, look, we have a way of thinking about what we do here. We're a boy institution, which means structure is absolutely critical to us.
Yeah. Structure.
You're going to hear that word all the time. Well, structure has a causation arrow to habit. Structure creates habit. Habit is critical because it's more long lasting. The hope is that the next causation arrow is lifestyle. Structure, habit, lifestyle. And the physical aspect, Tim, is incredibly important in that formula.
Mm.
Wow. Now that's a great formula. You guys ought to write a book on that, because every parent could say, wow, there's something there. Structure, and then habit, and of course, lifestyle. Michael, I think back, you and I are of a certain age. These two guys, they're so young. We used to start our school days off with the Chicken Fat song. And it came out during the Kennedy era. And Robert Preston, who was from the Music Man movie, did this thing on Go You Chicken Fat Go, and you'd be jumping jacks and you'd be doing push-ups. You'd start your day with that. And of course, we had recess a couple times a day. A lot of that has been eliminated from schools, and now people are bringing it back, realizing how important it is for boys and girls. And so this whole physical thing, Michael, is an important part of developing good male character.
Yeah, and in fact, I actually think we are closer in age. I know, Barry, you're 64. Is that right?
Well, he's just a kid.
And well, that's pretty close. 60. You and I are both 67. Are you still 67?
Yeah, for another couple months.
And Mark, how old are you, Mark?
Mark's a baby.
Yeah, 57.
57, he's a baby.
57. Well, we're all 10 years apart, because I can remember those, and I'm guessing you guys can. We can remember back to when, recess was big, and physical activity was big, and you had to do gym class, and you had to, and you're right. Things have gotten away from that. But two things. One is the holistic. I think your point, Barry, and everyone's point about how you can't really have a holistic approach to boys unless you add physical health in there. You just can't get it from everyone just sitting around. And then also the administration now is pushing it, right? I mean, Bobby Kennedy and Pete Hegseth and Trump, et cetera, are pushing this. And this is a good thing. We really want to get America to be more physical and to be healthier. And so structure, habit, lifestyle, I love that, Barry. Structure, habit, lifestyle. I think our leaders want that now, and that is a good thing. And of course, Army and Navy takes it seriously, and has been down this road for quite a long time as a military school. And that's something that it's a harder sell in public schools these days, or in a lot of other schools. I wish it weren't, but it is, because they're cutting away recess, right? They're cutting away the physical because they have been told that they got to do A, B, and C academically. So they're like, well, we can't do that. And what we constantly go into schools and try to show them is that if you increase the physical activity through brain breaks, through different foods in the morning and some more exercise in the morning, by keeping recess, if you do that, the kids do actually learn better, and they comprehend more, and they retain more. So they actually will do better on the test in May if we keep the physical, but it's a harder sell. luckily at A&A, they're on it. But I wish it wasn't such a hard sell because you can't separate mind and body. So, they're interconnected. So of course the physical is going to be crucial for the mental, the academic, etc.
And that's where parents then need to really be diligent to ensure, however they do it, that their kids are getting movement throughout the day when they're together as a family, whether it's being involved in intramural sports or it's taking some sort of judo class or going to the club together and riding a bike. When we don't get it in our schools, we want to make sure that somehow we as parents are providing it for them. And it's good not just for boys, but for our girls as well.
Mm-hmm. Good for everybody. There's a brain difference that Barry referred to, the rest state. I mean, it's absolutely good for everyone. I have 2 daughters. We were very physical with them. So it's good for everyone. And the reason that it's so urgent for boys and this holistic is that the male brain actually does go to a rest state. Yep. And if it's not being physical and it's not being stimulated, then the learning stops. Whereas the female brain's already doing 80% of its activity in the frontal lobe. So even if she's just sitting for hours, she's not hitting the same rest state. So it doesn't erase brain function. But for males, it does erase higher brain function if they are not, again, brain breaks or something physical. So add on the brain difference. It's another reason that I think a very wise, innovative school like Army and Navy Academy, why they focus on it, because they're dealing with boys. And so they know, okay, it's not only good for everyone, but here's how it's crucial for the holistic boy.
So we're recording this today. It is September 11th. And Barry and Mark, you want to give us a little weather report from what it's like there at your school right off of the Pacific Ocean, just to sort of maybe tempt some people who are moving into the winter months now and thinking, oh man, maybe we should be thinking something else.
I'm sheepish about reporting out that it's 78 degrees with a subtle and gentle breeze coming off the Pacific Ocean.
Wow. It's only 110 here or whatever. It's still Phoenix summer, but it's a beautiful
clouds way high up in the sky. So I just want to point that out.
All right. And the water is a little choppy today, right? Yeah.
No, not really.
Not really. But tomorrow it probably will be. So
yeah, it's a beautiful campus. It is well worth at least taking a look. Barry, give us the information. Where can people find you?
They can find us at our website, which is armyandnavyacademy.org. armyandnavyacademy.org.
And they are sponsors of our program. We are so grateful. Parents, I know you're grateful to them, not only for sponsorship, but for their great insights into boys. Round of applause for Mark and Barry. Thank you so much for your time. Michael, thank you. And thank you all for listening. You're listening to Wonder Parenting Podcast, a brain science approach to parenting. We'll be back with you next time. Thanks everyone.
Guys. Thank you.